Now, that was in a sense the protagonist I was kind of that was the story I was fighting against. This is sort of the way the literature spoke, is
Right.
that this is the way in which it's appropriate or natural to think about the ethics of a machine.
To think
And what I
about
was
programming ethics into a
yeah,
machine. Yeah.
when really what the story I ended up telling in the thesis was in some ways the opposite of that, which is it's much more appropriate and frankly accurate to think about these technologies not as agents that have their own ethics that we put into them, but rather as extremely powerful tools or capabilities that allow us to be ethical in new ways.
Mm.
They invite and they make possible decisions about how we organize cities, roads, infrastructure, you name it, that were not previously possible because we simply did not have the capabilities to make those decisions. So, for example, what we're now seeing with automated vehicle fleets is that if you have enough of these things on the road, and it's really not very many, maybe just 5% of cars, once 5% of cars are automated, it is possible for the company that controls those cars to control traffic across cities, across conceivably states, entire sections of road networks. Now, that's very concerning, but it's also an enormous opportunity for public planners, citizen groups, advocates to decide what they want roads to feel like at scale. And
Okay.
that was not
So,
easily, yeah, I'll pause there, please.
yeah, I just want to make sure that anybody who's just now joining understands where we have gotten because it's already kind of been a journey. So, you were talking about how you got your PhD in machine ethics, and you were talking about your thesis and how
Mm-hmm.
at the time there was a conversation about artificial intelligence and machine learning that focused around programming ethics into machines, right? Making self-driving cars work the way that we ethically believe that they should, or something like that. But in now that you're talking about what you're currently talking about with your company and with what I'm bringing you onto this program here for, is there are new characters in
Mm-hmm.
your novel of a thesis, not just the cars themselves, right? But the company or organization or group of people who are responsible for the fleet of vehicles, for the how, like, deciding how we want to make the roads feel, deciding how we want to make the overall system of
Mm-hmm.
AI agents that will soon form a large part of local government run, how we want them to run. So is that, am I on the right track here of as to
Yeah.
like how you got to the Hortus concept and who the characters are in the story now in 2025?
Yeah, that's very well said. So I'll just even distill the way you were just throwing that back at me. So the story of my journey into the field of AI ethics was changing the narrative away from the ethics of models to the ethics of systems. And what that
Yeah.
means is instead of just thinking of ethics as a way to accurately represent some decision at some static point in time that some hypothetical entity might make, whether it's a machine or a human. Instead, you think about what is the behavior that we want once there's this new kind of infrastructure, this new type of technology powering life, powering cities, powering roads, powering energy, powering the internet, right? It's a new horizon of decision making that actually it's awesome to embrace, and so it really asks us to be more ethical than we were able to be before because we didn't have that horizon at hand. We weren't able to decide at scale how we wanted roads to function or feel. We were not previously able to decide how we want energy infrastructure to be optimized at the level of an entire nation. We were not previously able to decide how to double or triple our productivity of a small business or of a municipality, now that you can effectively hire out dozens of artificial agents to do all sorts of tasks that previously were things you either had to do manually or just not do. The story of the public sector for the last 100 years has really been, frankly, that there's always been more that needed to be done than could be done for the public. And I think the story that we need to tell right now, and I think the ethical calling here is, now that we have a technology that is on the cusp of actually making feasible all of these priorities by which we could serve the public, how can we actually then achieve it? How can we actually serve the public better and in the way that fits that mandate for the first time? Whereas previously we had to, cut this Gordian knot of like robbing Paul to pay Peter in terms of what cities or states are faced with.
And now, whose responsibility is it? And who owns the outcomes? Who's going to be accountable for how things end up, right? And you mentioned all of these bigger ways that AI could transform the way we think about our municipalities and even our countries at large in the world. And I see a question from Megan, and I don't know how to pull it up on the screen, but she asks, where do you see the most immediate wins for AI in local government on an operational citizen engagement or policy level? What are some of the good things you believe could happen?
Well, I think the answer is that we can serve the public better. So it's one thing for teams or individual people to just, for example, play with ChatGPT because you're bored, or you want to see how many memes it can generate, or you want to, put a picture of you on some kind of video that you like, or whatever. That's all fun and games, but it's another thing to ask, how can tools like this actually get, for example, local government to work, not just in the ways that citizens are accustomed to, but in ways that actually affirm what constituents want, right? How can we actually do right by citizens? And that's my answer to the question of, how should local government use AI? Well, they should use it if they think they can actually serve the public better in the way that they use it. New companies, still startups in Silicon Valley. OpenAI is still basically a startup, even though it's a giant multi-billion-dollar enterprise at this point. It's run like a startup, and what that means is it has this kind of Willy Wonka mandate. Every few months it rolls out an everlasting gobstopper, or it rolls out some new fancy reasoning model or something like that. That's powerful, but it needs to be given oversight. It needs to be held accountable in the way that, in this case, public sector teams or public interest advocates have enough of an understanding of that new kind of power that they are able to then integrate it into their own mandates and their own goals to serve their constituents or stakeholders better. It's almost, and this is again the system level frame that we were talking about earlier, it's almost like a metabolic process. It's like a digestive system. And the problem right now is that we're kind of getting these new kinds of nutrients shoved down our throats, but we haven't yet developed the organs and the metabolism needed to really digest it and really make use of it in the ways that we could if we had that ability. And so that does feed into the vision for what Hortus, my company, is doing. What we were basically doing is, we're not creating additional AI models or agents or chat. We think there's enough of those things. What we're building is that infrastructure to make it so that public sector teams, nonprofits, small businesses, basically any group trying to do right by the public interest is able to compare, assess, and select the right AI tools for use cases that matter to them, tools that actually solve their problems. It's kind of like the digestive tract for public interest AI is how I would describe it.
what you've been building recently, and I know it's going to make your eyes light up, so I want to give you a chance to talk about it. We met through the GovAI Coalition, and we have been on the industry relations committee together. And you currently have a project going on that is going to move forward these ideals that your company holds in a more tangible way. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we are building, as you mentioned, in partnership with the GovAI Coalition, we are building a marketplace to basically act as this clearinghouse. The idea is that up and coming AI vendors, which could be startups, they could be more established companies that are building new tools or refining new tools, uh, who want to market their products on new kinds of use cases, new kinds of verticals that the public sector and local government and public interest groups would find value in. It's an opportunity for them to list their products in ways that are transparent, accountable, and trustworthy. So the way these are kind of classic values in the ethics of AI space, right?